Good evening. Let me move my mic a little bit closer. Welcome to the RSU5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, and we are back at the Pownell Elementary School this evening. We have a couple board members who aren't with us this evening. Susanna and Vali will both be here in shortly. Jen and Jill are both excused this evening. So we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the March 16th and March 23rd, 2022 meetings as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Maddie and Colin, thank you. All those in favor? Great. Adjustments?
Just a couple. We do not have a 6B good news from Pownell. Unfortunately, Principal Demick had to go home sick today, so that will be eliminated from there. And then I just have a quick resignation to report under 8.
Okay. And I think since we don't have Brady or Piper here, we can probably move past the student rep report as well. Okay, so we will move on to public comment. If we had anyone who wanted to share anything, we ask that you come up to the microphone, just share your name, where you're from, and share away. Nobody appears to be racing to the microphone. Okay, so we do not have a superintendent's report this evening or Oh, sorry, that's right. Why I just.
So I would like to announce that Brian Burkmeyer is going to be retiring at the end of the year. He is a Freeport High School math teacher.
Great. Okay, so we will move on to board comments and committee reports, strategic communications.
Okay. Well, we did a lot with surveys.
I think we for some reason they're a little bit quieter tonight, so we just want to move the mic a little bit closer to you.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes, you can see we talked a lot about the exit survey and the migration of students. On the exit survey, we sent out 129 surveys and got 32 back, which was only 25%. From the exit survey, most of the responses were people were leaving for non-educational reasons. However, we looked at trends over the last few years, and there were a few other things that were on the trends in the educational side of things. Lack of rigor, behavior safety, and communication. We also talked about the fact that for many years, we haven't gotten much of a response from exit surveys, and I guess the committee would like to suggest actually that we not do the exit surveys anymore and just leave it up to principals doing some exit interviews if they so desire. So, Becky, I don't know whether that's our decision or the whole board's decision, but that was our suggestion anyway.
Yes, I don't think we need an official vote, but we did want to inform the board and maybe get some feedback if they're comfortable with that.
Are you looking for feedback now before you move on to your other stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any thoughts on Beth?
Just a question. Am I on? Okay. So why did we start the surveys? And is it like we found a need for it? Like the principal, we didn't feel that they were getting enough information from the exit?
Let Becky answer that.
I think this was begun before I got here, and I think it was because at that time there were a lot of, well, there was the perception that a lot of people, and I was not here, so other board members may be able to also respond to that. But I think because we were potentially going through withdrawals, that there was a perception that a lot of people were leaving the district, and we just wanted to try to collect some data to see if there was a way to see if there was a trend that we could then try to turn around. But you can see from the data, I think, or that was, oh, that's the migration. Well, I think the reason we're discussing both of them, on the
Right.
lavender sheet, you can see that it's been pretty stable.
Yeah,
That
we'll talk about
we're
that.
losing about 20% of the students for various reasons, and most of them, as Candy said, when the ones that are filling out the surveys are saying, we're leaving for reasons that have nothing to do with education. So I think since you started this, we've also started the parent satisfaction survey that we just recently got back, and we're starting to look at that data. And I just think that that is much more valuable data than what we're getting from this particular survey.
Maddie?
So I arrived on the school board after Becky arrived here, but I was a big fan of collecting exit survey data and watching migration data. Just with my background in the corporate world, it's like you want to get that information. And I remember feeling concerned just because of perception that there might be some reason about which the board might not be aware, and that this is the best way to figure that out. But I feel very comfortable having, now on this committee, it's my first year on this committee, but having had a chance to look at that data and even look at past year's data, that even though there are some trends, it doesn't look like anything that's pointing to a blind spot we have either district-wide or in any of the schools. And so I'm very comfortable recommending that, that this cumbersome task that has taken a lot of time be handled more personally by the principals who are aware of families leaving and perhaps know a little bit more about why they're leaving, so that they can get that feedback more directly for their schools if they need to.
So my question is, if we're going to leave this to the principals to capture as they're able to with students that are leaving, is there any expectation that they're going to report back what they're learning to us, or is it for them to use as they need?
It's really for them to use as they need. I mean, they do know why, I would say 90% of the time they know when a family is withdrawing and the reasons behind it. And I think it would be left to them to use it as they need. The intention, definitely, I guess, the intention is not to take something away from the central office and put it on the backs of the principals. So if the board felt strongly like, no, we think this is the best way to gather the data, I don't want to now say to the principals, you have an additional task. We would just keep it at the central office. But your sample size, as you can see from, I think, on the blue sheet,
Right.
The school responses, you're just not getting a lot of strong data. And I think the data, I think it's better to be surveying parents from time to time, the whole body, rather than just the ones that are leaving, because I think you're going to get more accurate information by doing that.
So my thought, as I look at the numbers, as I often do, is I know you were anecdotally throwing out a number of 90% of the time they know why a kid's leaving. Is there any way that, if we just, I don't know what the tracking mechanism is when somebody leaves, right? So if there was just a document where they were tracking, the 5 primary reasons, and as kids leave, they just track it, right? So I know it's, but in theory, there's probably, it's 10 a month spread across 6 schools, so it's not like hours and hours of data input each time. But, even if it's something that the secretaries did, or, if, I think the problem is we're getting a small return rate, right?
Yes.
25% is a small return rate.
Yes.
But if what I'm hearing is that the answer to the question that we're asking is known already by people in that office, why are we happy accepting only 25%? Because I understand why people don't respond. They're like, we're done, we're moving on. But if the information is already in the brains of the people that are in the schools, is there a way to capture that in a very easy, non-invasive way that we could, be looking for those trends? Because maybe the trend is in the 75% that aren't answering. I don't know. Colin?
Yeah, I suppose my question has to do with how how any information is being used to address, I guess, anything that's either acute or anything that is a trend. And I think, so I mean, I have questions about, for example, if again, the sample size is so small, but if communication and lack of rigor and behavioral and safety issues are being flagged, what is the mechanism through which particular individuals on behalf of the RSU or on behalf of particular schools are taking that information and running it through the mill, or taking the information that's being collected by the principals, and how does that become transparent to whoever needs to know that, whether that's us or the superintendent? Because otherwise, having any data, just like having it doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's nice to have it, but if we're not making use of it and I guess my only other question would be, like, at what point does the percentage loss of students become, like, at what point does it trigger? Like, the year that 2020 was 23%, but there are probably so many mitigating circumstances that, or like in 2015 when it hit 21%, was that like were there klaxons going off because that's like, we don't want 21%, but like, when do we get concerned? Why are we concerned? And what information do we need to know in order to be able to address that concern?
So I think if you see that there isn't a number that we've discussed on the strategic communication, but I mean, obviously in 2020 that was COVID, and we talked about that, I think, even with the enrollment. Like, we had projected that we were going to have increased enrollment, and then it ended up that we didn't hit our target, which was the first time where we had projected. In my time here, we've projected, and then we've been getting more students than that. So we've been under projecting, but this was the one year where we over projected, right? And I think your points are what we've talked about, Colin, is that, are you really going to take such a small sample size and make a systemic change from, 11 people? I think there's a lot of danger in that. And so when we did the strategic planning, we did a lot of surveying, and from that, the strategic plan was created, right? And I think communication is an area that you can, I don't know that you ever reach a point where you're like, we're there, right? And there's not anything we can do to improve communication. And I think the same is true of the lack of rigor. We're always looking for that spot where we want all of our assignments to be rigorous and meaningful to our students. So I think that as a committee, that's what we're grappling with, that we're not getting a return rate that is helpful to us, where when you're surveying all the parents, as we did recently, and you're looking at that data and those comments, I mean, I just feel like that can help. Usually what happens with that data, principals will take it back to their leadership team and they examine it, and you will see that if they see a trend, that they address that in their, the next year's goals or whatever.
I am wondering if there's a better way for us to do this, and maybe it's not principals, maybe it's the principal and their assistant principal, or even a secretary in the office, or a teacher who knows a family particularly well, who reaches out to a parent or guardian and says, can we just have a 5-minute chat? We want to make sure we're understanding your reasons for leaving and give you the opportunity to give us feedback verbally. And, and we have some kind of a master spreadsheet that lives at the district level where they can then answer these same questions. Maybe that personal reach out, and phone calls can go unanswered, but maybe the more personal approach will yield better results. I don't know if that would be a significant hardship. I don't know that we have that many people leaving that would make it a real problem.
I think it's hard to do something like that systemically with validity. I mean, I can speak with confidence that when we know of a family that Jenny methodically will pull from Power School students who are exiting, and that those surveys go to those parents. I think if we go to a system that you're kind of suggesting, Maddie, is that I think it's going to be hit or miss, and I think the data is going to be less valid than what it is now. And I go back to Colin's point, is that we've now done this for 7 years, and I don't think this is the survey that is creating change. But to me, if we want the information, the system that we currently have set up, I think, is then the one that I would stick with, because I think that it is yielding you the best results that you can get.
Yeah, I keep sort of forgetting that we had that conversation where we're talking about the different kinds of surveys, and I sort of, sorry, this was like 3 weeks ago or something, a lifetime ago. And I do, I think you can over-survey a population, and people leaving typically don't want to tell you why they're leaving. They're, either they're busy because they've taken a different job and they're moving to a different place, or they're fed up and they don't want to talk about it anymore. And we're trying to figure out how to get that fed up information to find out if we have a problem. And probably, I think you're probably right. The best way to get that information is in consistently surveying the entire population.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure we've done this one 7 years, right? I think we've got 4 or 5, but
Oh, am I looking at the migration?
yeah, I think the migration we've done longer than we've done the exit surveys, is my understanding.
Well, you've done it at least 6 years, because it's been going on since I've been here.
Okay. But I feel like I always remember this sheet where the kids were
Yes.
going to different.
Yes.
So I think that's been going on longer, and I think it did stem from some, things we were hearing about around withdrawal and were kids leaving for whatever reasons, so that was what prompted it initially. I mean, I think we can see that consistently, barring a pandemic, our numbers are pretty consistent year to year on how many kids we don't have in our schools, right? So there will always be a portion of kids that don't go to the public school. I mean, I don't know if there's a benchmark of what we should be aiming for, but I think our consistency around 20%, tells us that we're not doing anything that's, acutely driving people away now, right? We haven't changed anything that's making people leave, which is, I think, one of the reasons we were doing the exit survey, right? So, I'm hesitant because I think this one is even more work, the purple sheet, right? The migration sheet, because I know Ginny literally calls these schools, right? Because this is what we learned when we had the enrollment study, right? Our numbers didn't match up with what he was pulling for his numbers, because what the state has is not everybody reports to the state like, you know, they don't have a Ginny calling everybody and finding the real numbers. So, so I know this is labor intensive, but for me, I think this is probably, I mean, I don't know. I mean, are we up for eliminating both? Or are we trying to, I mean, if we're consistent and happy with how things are going, and if they're not telling us anything that is, you know, that's prompting change, is there benefit in both of these data points? I mean, I know the other reason, I think one of the reasons we started the migration one was with the charter schools, when the charter schools came online with Baxter, and you know, we're within driving distance of several of the charter schools, right? So we wanted to see if we were going to lose a bunch of kids, would it grow over time? It doesn't seem like it is, you know, terribly. So, I mean, I don't know. If we're trying to be efficient with people's time and making sure we're not having people collect data just for the giggles.
The committee, the strategic communication committee did not talk about eliminating the migration data at this time.
No. Becky, do you want this to go back to the committee for more discussion? You know, or just have
I mean, I guess the question is,
or?
yeah, no, I don't think you need a vote. So
Okay.
the question is, you know, the recommendation from the committee is to
Do away
stop
with
do away with the
survey.
exit survey, right? So does anybody feel strongly that we should keep the exit survey? Is everybody okay with the recommendation of that committee? So then I guess maybe what I would ask of that committee the next time you meet is, you know, stretch that thinking to be, do we need to do the migration survey? And probably there's more thinking to go into that than what we would do right now, but I mean, I think you have the support on the exit committee at this point.
Okay, well,
Hey, I asked if you wanted it right in the middle. You said yes. Colin.
Can I ask a question about the that homeschooling number back wherever it was? I'm just curious if we have any understanding of if that number is high, if that number is low, if that number is right in the Goldilocks zone in terms of like town populations and I guess trends. I'm just sort of, just because it is the largest number. I was just curious if there was if we have any sense of that.
I don't have any comparative data on that. Oh, you do? Oh, but Beth does.
For the record, there's a color-coded folder that's being accessed.
Okay.
All right, so we have 18, 19.
20 and 21. Okay. So wow, this is very interesting. Okay.
Well, see, that's why I kept it.
So I don't know if there was any change in methodology, right? So I'll put that caveat out, right? But if there isn't, homeschooled for 2018 was 37. In 2019 was 53. And then we have in here in 2020 was 142. And then in 2021, it's dropped back to 127, but which is still, 150% more than the prior year.
And maybe I
mean-
misunderstood your question. I thought you meant with like area districts or districts in the state.
It was sort of both, but
Okay,
that's very
okay.
helpful. Yeah,
That
just
is-
in general,
okay.
I don't know how that is. I just didn't know how that was understood, like how if that was tracked. But that information, that's really interesting. That it'll be interesting next year to see whether it remains and whether
Definitely, we were aware that with COVID, that there were a lot of people opting out for different reasons. Some of it was like, their own health reasons, which makes sense. And then, some of it was just all the guidelines that we had and protocols that we had to put in place.
Beth?
And I was just going to add to that I think a lot of people are still homeschooling because of COVID. Like, it's not, COVID may be ending for some people, but I think a lot of people still have. So I think that maybe that choice made during that time might stick more, and we just don't know yet. But I think that we can't say that this year hasn't been without its COVID challenges. So we'll see what happens for next year, obviously. But.
Yeah, it's just interesting to look at that. I'm just looking at the enrollment numbers, the total enrollment numbers, and it's just interesting to look at those two things in conjunction, because to go from 2012 students in 1920 to 1949 in 2021 to 1990 in 21-22, and then back. It's just interesting to think about, those patterns are just interesting to think about.
Because I think, the statewide pattern around enrollment is down, right? Like the state is shrinking as it relates to the children in the school system. I don't think that's been the case in RSU5 historically. So I think those down numbers we're seeing are directly related to the homeschooling. Whereas some districts are battling that sort of on two fronts, right? Like actual declining and kids leaving for homeschooling.
I will say that I find this data helpful because I think that I think it tells more of a story than what the exit survey data does. Because to me, when you see that there's a high number of our students going to Waldorf, that's a very specific type of learning that I think that we can take some nuggets for. And I think that aligns with our strategic plan of wanting more hands-on, project-based, student-centered kind of learning. And I think that reinforces that, right? And so I think that you can look at, where are we losing our kids to, and what does that school offer that maybe we don't offer, and then, we can be very conscious about, no, we don't want to offer that type of schooling. So I think it is a richer data source than the exit survey.
Mara?
I just wanted to suggest to the Strategic Communications Committee, can you hear me? that maybe one of the things you consider is doing the survey less frequently. Maybe it doesn't have to be an either or, like we do it or we don't, but maybe if we did it every other year or, something every 3 years, something like that, it could save Ginny some time. But we could still keep the data.
You mean the purple one, the migration? Yeah. Maddie?
I know the committee's going to discuss this, but I just want to say for the record that I think we should keep doing that annually. I think unlike the rest of the state, most of the state, we are growing. All of our towns are growing, and there's more choice where we live than almost any other place. And it's a really interesting time for education, too, and it'll be really interesting to see what sorts of choices families make. What can we infer from the data? The homeschooling number I'm very curious about. We have vaccination requirements that came into law during COVID, and I'm wondering if we're going to see that have an effect. I've been curious to, COVID sort of obscured that last year, so I'm curious to see what happens in the future. So I would strongly advocate for, sorry Jenny, but keeping this one up.
Okay. Any other comments on the committee? Looks like you guys had a very full meeting. All right. So we don't have any policy. Oh, good, this is the short one. It must be after the vote that I have the big, long one I have to read, right? Okay, so we're on to 12, unfinished business. Do I have a motion for consideration and approval that the vote entitled "Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Budget Validation Referendum and to Authorize the Notice of Amounts Adopted" be approved in the form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting? Susanna and Beth, thank you. So basically, all this is doing is saying that we're gonna publicly notice the meeting for the 3-town annual budget meeting that will be held at Freeport High School on May 25th. Yes, May 25th. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? None opposed. Great, thank you. We don't have new business on here, so we have a slate of positions. So if there's no objection, we'll have Becky go through them and we'll vote on them as a slate. Did I skip something?
I just looked at my calendar. Are you sure that the May 25th meeting is at Freeport High School?
Yes, we moved it back to Freeport High School.
Thank you, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, originally I think it was Durham's year for it, but we figured for spacing purposes, we would do it at the high school because it's a little bit bigger. Anybody have an issue with voting on these as a slate? Okay.
So I'm excited to be introducing you to what we hope to be some of our new staff members. First, I'd like to recommend Christine McDonald as the STEM teacher at Mass Landing. She's already been holding this position for the past 1.5 years as a replacement to Gail Wolotsky. And now that Gail is the long-term director of technology, I'm recommending that Christine is the permanent replacement for the STEM position. She's done an outstanding job, and I'm confident that she will continue to do so. And then I'm also happy to recommend Victoria Cusino as the first grade teacher at Durham Community School. She graduated from Iona College with a degree in political science, and she has her master's in teaching. She is currently teaching first grade in Rhode Island. She's a very impressive teacher, and her references spoke of her ability to build strong relationships. One of her references remarked, "Her patience, intelligence, and constant striving for growth and development led her to make positive impacts wherever she goes and with whomever she works with." So we're excited to have Victoria join us at Durham Community School. Next, I'm happy to recommend Leah Campbell as the special education teacher at Moore Street School. She graduated from University of Vermont with a degree in early childhood education. Previously, she's been working in community programs as our childhood education coordinator. She's also currently working on her social work degree, which makes her a great fit for this position. She'll be able to use all of those skills. Leah has a promising future ahead of her, and we are thrilled to have her as a member of the Moore Street staff. Next, I'm happy to recommend Marissa Terrio as the first grade teacher at Moore Street School. She graduated from UNE with a degree in early childhood education. She's currently teaching at the Reedfield Elementary School, and one of her references remarked, "Marissa truly goes the extra mile to engage with and become familiar with her students. She knows exactly where their strengths and weaknesses lie, but she also gets to know them as individuals. The relationships she builds with each student makes all the difference in their learning." So I'm excited to recommend Marissa. Next, I would like to recommend Amber Harrison as the pre-K teacher at Moore Street for a one-year only position. She graduated from UMO with a degree in elementary ed and a master's from St. Joseph. She is currently teaching pre-K in Brunswick, and one of her references noted, Amber plans developmentally appropriate activities and engages all of her students while continually encouraging all students to do their best. And so we're excited to have Amber join us. Next, I'm happy to recommend Kate Bacon as the third grade teacher at Mass Landing School. She graduated from the University of Vermont with a degree in elementary ed and a master's in education from Leslie College. She is currently teaching first grade in Falmouth, and one of her references noted, Kate is one of those calm forces in our school community. She brings a thoughtful and understanding lens to all she does, whether it is in her work in the classroom with students or during meetings with her peers. She's always willing to ask the meaningful questions and do the work that leads to progress, growth, and a better school community. We're excited to have Kate join us. And last, I would like to recommend Kathleen Canelay as a classroom teacher at Mass Landing School. It has not been determined which grade that she will be teaching, but she's happy to go wherever she's needed at Mass Landing. She graduated from the Keene State College in New Hampshire with a degree in elementary ed and a master's in special ed. And she's currently teaching second grade at a charter school. And one of her references noted, Kathleen exudes an incredible balance of warmth, ownership, and flexibility as an educator. Her character and professionalism is of the highest quality. And so we're very excited to have Kathleen join us in RSU5.
Okay, I just got a message that someone said that the YouTube has no audio. I don't know if that was that individual's issue or if you guys can check on that, but. All right, so I'm going to read through all the motions and we'll vote once. Do I have to read through all the motions? Yes?
I don't know. Go for it.
Okay. I haven't talked enough tonight. Okay, do I have a motion for consideration and approval to employ a .8 STEM RTI teacher at Mass Landing School for the 22-23 school year, a first grade teacher at the Durham Community School for the 22-23 school year, a special education teacher at Moore Street School for the remainder of the 21-22 school year, one-year position, to employ a first grade teacher at Moore Street School for the 22-23 school year, to employ a pre-K teacher at the Moore Street School for the 22-23 school year, a one-year position, to employ a third grade teacher at the Mass Landing School for the 22-23 school year, and to employ a classroom teacher at the Mass Landing School for the 22-23 school year.
Well done.
Thank you. Susanna and Maddie, any questions? All right, sounds like an impressive group of, you're good?
I just wanted to comment that I'm pleased to see how many candidates we had for these positions. It's nice nice that we're an attractive place to come work.
Yes.
Maura, you're good? All right. I feel like you're so far away today. I'm sorry. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Great, thank you. So we are back to public comment. Anything you want to share?
Christine Watson, resident of Pownell. And I have a question, actually, with this new employment of a classroom teacher. Is this something that was needed or something that somebody really wanted?
Okay, so we were just talking about the public comment rules. So generally, how public comment works is you can ask a question and Cynthia can get contact info. She could actually probably answer the question for you. But generally how it works is if you have a comment, you can share it. But we don't answer questions just because it sometimes can get unruly that way. Obviously not tonight, but we try to keep the rules in place regardless of the situation. So Cynthia can either answer the question for you, or if not, she can get your contact info and we'll get back to you with the answer.
That would be awesome.
Or Becky is happy to give you the answer as well. All right. All right, so do I have a motion to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA Section 4056D for the purpose of discussing administrator negotiations for RSU5? Susanna, Beth, thank you. All those in favor? Great. So I guess it doesn't matter if the audio's out because we're done anyway. It looks fine on your side? Okay, maybe it was just their issue. Thank you. All right, thanks, guys.